Hi, my name is Rob Scott from UC Today, and welcome to our February Microsoft Teams news update. So as always, I'm joined by Microsoft Teams expert and co-founder of Empowering.Cloud, Tom Arbuthnot. And together we're going to be talking through the most popular Teams headlines. Plus, after the news, we're going to be diving into some open Teams Q&A with a panel of special guests. So, Tom, welcome.
Hey, Rob, how's it going?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, good. Lots happening in the Microsoft space and certainly the Microsoft Teams space in the last few weeks. You've been out and about. You've been at ISC. Did you have a good event?
Yeah, I've been at ISC. It was really good, actually. I really enjoyed the show. Like, there was about 90 Microsoft people there and all the OEMs there. So it was like 3 days of back-to-back meetings and briefings and some fun socializing as well. But yeah, we've got some news certainly that came out of ISC, and just in general, it's been a busy start to the year with Microsoft quarterly results and some changes to Microsoft Teams. So plenty to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a nice place to start, isn't it? There is a big number released in their quarterly results. Tom, tell us more.
Yeah, so we got the quarterly results from Microsoft, and it's gone up to 280 million monthly active users Teams. So another big jump. So the last number we had was 270. So clearly, like the number is slowing compared to some of the massive jumps we saw in the pandemic. So that's about 10 million. I think the last numbers we got were January last year, and this would have been till December. So about 10 million in a year. We also got the number of 500,000 active Microsoft Teams rooms as well. So that's been growing very, very fast, and there's many more coming because those are December numbers, so they've probably jumped again by now. But no new Teams phone numbers either, so we're still kind of not sure where that is officially. We think around 15 million, but 12 million was the last official number on that.
Well, it's a big number, but it's not all about the number now. I think they pretty much won the race, haven't they? So certainly getting some more granular numbers would be quite interesting. But I know Patrick from Vale is going to join us maybe at the next one, the next session that we do. So maybe we can get some numbers out of him going forward.
Yeah, there's still some room to grow there. I mean, Office 365 is way higher than that. They're getting up to, heading towards the 400 million users. So it's not even everybody that's Office 365 is active yet. But it's really, everybody's watching the phone number. And we'll talk about Teams Premium in a second. But Microsoft are trying to push rooms. They're pushing phone. They're pushing premium. So those are the numbers that are slightly more interesting now for the market as to how quickly that 280 gets converted to active Teams phone.
Yeah, completely agree. So let's talk about Teams Premium. So more on Premium. A little bit more news come out, and it's been officially launched. Is that right, Tom?
Yeah, so it got launched at the start of February officially, and it's on the list is $10 per user per month, and there's a $7.50 per user per month offer for a couple of months while they ramp. And I think Microsoft's timing has been very lucky or strategic, depending how you want to look at it. But I think obviously there's a bit of an economic crunch at the moment, like adding a $10 user license for quite an interesting range of features. And Randy, on one of the previous episodes, we talked about this, like kind of there's security features in there, there's webinar features in there, but critically there's AI features in there. And suddenly all the OpenAI and ChatGPT stuff got kind of massive understanding in the world. And now it's like, $10 for magic AI to make my life better. That sounds like really good value. So I think Microsoft have really done well on the fact that AI, kind of the potential of AI has got a bit more mainstream, and because Teams Premium, and you saw it in the marketing, they're tying it very closely to where AI-ifying everything, that suddenly has made it more interesting. I still think it's an odd SKU. It's still kind of a mix of different features, but the fact those AI features are in there will be really interesting to see.
Yeah, is that the winning feature that Premium needs? We'll see going forward as the ChatGPT story unfolds, I'm sure. So, well, I mean, Tom, let's talk about ISC. You were cameras on at ISC, so lots of vendors with their latest innovations. What was top of your list? I know audio. We said we'd talk about maybe the new AudioCodes, new Microsoft Teams Rooms range first.
Yeah, there was lots of news there, so we won't get through every single one, but some of the top pickouts from vendors were AudioCodes showed their whole new range. So they're really moving away from just being they're traditionally known as SBC vendor. They obviously brought out Teams phones, they brought out a bunch of software, they've got some contact center agent AI stuff, but this was really their unveiling of their Teams portfolio. So they unveiled a new console, they unveiled a content camera, they unveiled a new room system based on Android, and some new camera technology as well. So really kind of a full portfolio from them, which is interesting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. We got LenovoThinkSmart View Plus Microsoft Teams display.
Yeah, this is Lenovo used to have a small form factor Teams display, but this is a full-on 27-inch monitor with built-in Android compute as a Teams display. So kind of similar to what you're seeing from Neat and Yealink. Lenovo have a matching monitor, and it can act as a monitor and a USB hub as well. And again, they also showed their Windows bar, so they're pushing hard into this space. It's interesting to see Poly joining up with HP, Dell pushing out some interesting kit, and now Lenovo kind of doubling down in this space. You're seeing those traditional PC vendor brands really pushing into this UC kit space.
Yeah, indeed we are. Well, over to the headset space, and now it's Jabra doing video, but you also dropped by and took a look at the PanaCast 50 video bar system. Is that right?
Yeah, and this is interesting again. So now Jabra in the room system space. So they previously had USB bars that would connect to other people's Microsoft Teams rooms, and now they've brought out their own Android bar. So it's called the video bar system, which I'm not sure is the most catchy name in the world, but it's similar to the PanaCast 50 in terms of camera tech, but now it has built-in MTR on Android as well. So I mean, this OEM space is getting really busy in Microsoft Teams, where it feels like everybody has a room system now, which is good for the customer, good for competition, but interesting for the OEMs to have to kind of stand out.
Yeah, certainly there's lots of choice, isn't there? A couple more vendors that I spotted you drop by. DTEN, for example. What was on the D10s there?
Yeah, DTEN are the newest OEM on the block for Teams, so still pre-release, but they're well known in the Zoom space. They're a Zoom room vendor coming over to Microsoft Teams, and they were showing their first Teams rooms on Android board. And again, they have a portfolio of devices, so it'd be interesting to see what's coming with them in the coming months. But yeah, it looked like an interesting bit of kit, and I know they're big in things like Edu, so it'd be interesting to see how Microsoft push into that space with D10.
Superb. And last but not by no means least, we also saw the Neat new management platform, Neat Pulse. What was that like?
Yeah, this was really standout for me, really exciting. So Neat have not had their own management platform previously. They've relied on the Microsoft native tooling or the Zoom native tooling, but now they have a cloud-based management platform that can manage their devices, but also has remote control of the devices, so you can do the kind of see the panel in the room, do the room join, do some troubleshooting, and the usual stuff you expect from management services. You can pull logs and do reboots, things like that. But yeah, it's still pre-release, but looks really slick, and it'd be interesting to see from Neat how that comes out commercially. Will it be a cost? Will it be bundled? But OEM tooling is starting to be one of the differentiators in this crowded space as to why you might go with one vendor over another.
Very nice. Well, I'm sure we could dive into that a little bit more later on as a topic potentially. Next up, we said we'd talk about the Stream Deck Teams integration. Tell us more about this product, 'cause I'm not too familiar.
Yeah, we need to get you on the Stream Deck bandwagon. I'm sure some of your team are. So this is a dedicated hardware device, a USB device, mainly in the gaming and streaming community. And they're like hardware macro buttons you can program to do almost anything. So, turn lights on, launch programs, things like that. So people use them in gaming and streaming for transitions, changing their camera angles. There have been hacks to make that work with Teams, but there's not been a real slick API way to do it. It's been essentially sending keyboard commands to Teams, which means it had to be in focus. But now Microsoft have released first-party support, so there's an API, which means that you can have things like reactions, those emotion kind of reactions. You can have camera on, camera off. You can have mute. You can have end call. It's really for your kind of more hardcore pro user or streamer who wants that dedicated control. role, but that's a lot of our community, and it released a great fanfare. Unfortunately, there is some issues with the rollout at the moment, so if you're trying to use it right now, it's not in the Elgato store who make the Stream Deck. Microsoft are tweaking it a little bit and it'll be back, but the reaction was really big. So there's clearly a lot of people that like the idea of having dedicated hardware buttons for their Teams meetings and webinars.
Well, that's taken it next level for sure. I mean, is there an element of accessibility here as well for certain individuals, or is it really just for the power teams, the Teams power user?
Yeah, it definitely could be, actually. That's a fair point. At the moment, there are a set amount of commands that Microsoft give you, but I've already seen requests for additional commands and additional scenarios. So yeah, some people do, from an accessibility point of view, like to have that. For me, it's just a massive convenience point of view of knowing those buttons are always in the same place and will always work regardless of what's in focus. So that ability to quickly mute and unmute with a hardware button that doesn't change, or quickly, hit one button to record the meeting, is just really convenient. And these are not super expensive. They're consumer, prosumer type devices. So you're talking like 130, 140 quid for the hardware, and no ongoing software cost. So, not the cheapest thing in the world, but for a productivity user, not an unreachable number for that kind of device.
Great stuff. Well, I'll have to take a look into that, but we'll see.
We'll get you hooked. We got you with all the high-end mics, Rob. It's only a matter of time now. You have the lights going and everything.
Well, I still have my big button telephone, behind me as well. So, I like buttons. So anyway, right. Next up, we said we'd talk about Microsoft Teams Phone UK calling plan. Tell us more on that one.
Yeah, Microsoft don't tend to make a big deal about changes in the calling plans, and I don't think they want to tread on the operators' toes too much. But we did get an announcement that Microsoft has moved the UK calling plan from what was 1,200 domestic minutes included to 3,000 domestic minutes included, which is the same setup that US and Canada have for their Microsoft calling plans. Rest of Europe still seems to be sticking at 1,200 minutes. So I don't know if this was because it's more cost effective in the UK, because it was more competitive, whatever drove it. But Microsoft haven't changed the pricing at all. So they've just upped the value. Now, the reality is these minutes are bundled up per plan type. So most users don't use anywhere near 3,000 minutes. So in some ways, it's a bit of a give that probably on average doesn't cost Microsoft very much, because people don't tend to use that many minutes. But it's still, there's extra value to be had there, and it puts a little bit more pressure on the competitiveness of that space for people going after the minutes.
Yeah, I can imagine, but I don't know how that sits in in line with or compared to some of the other providers out there. But it sounds very generous. They've almost trebled the minutes. So hats off to Microsoft. Good stuff. Next up, we said we'd talk about Microsoft Teams, the MS720 exam. There's a change happening here.
Yeah, this will be a big change for consultants and anybody that is a Microsoft partner and has to get these exams and badges. So Microsoft set these exams and technical exams for people to get to prove their knowledge. Microsoft are moving from what was called the 720, the voice exam, which a lot of people in our space would have got, to a new exam, 721, which is Collaboration Communication System Engineer, which I think is a slightly odd name, but it's trying to reflect the joint skill set of Microsoft Teams meetings and rooms, so physical devices and voice all in one exam. So kind of bring those two worlds together. So in an enterprise, you might traditionally have had voice engineers and room engineers and different things. And Microsoft are seeing a world where those come together. Actually, it's a good chat for our friends on this pod afterwards to see if that's reflected in enterprise or if it's still very separate. But Microsoft definitely see a world, and I can see the logic. A lot of the device management stuff spans the IP phones and the rooms, so they're kind of bringing those worlds together. So I've put some links in the chat. There'll be a bunch of training material coming. Your 720 will still be valid, and you can renew it for at least a year. But at some point, you'll be lining up for that 721. If you're a voice person, you're going to have to skill up on rooms, and if you're a room person, you're going to have to skill up on voice.
Good stuff. Well, it certainly seems to be driving the right behaviour. So next up, something a little bit more technical. Microsoft Teams phone number routing logic change. Tell us more.
Yeah. This is a bit in the weeds, but really important to understand. So, Microsoft are changing the way they route numbers in Teams for a niche scenario of where people have an extension number set on their phone number. So the technical term is they have an ext equals and then some extra digits for their extension. So if you're a Teams voice admin, you want to check how those numbers are set up, because what they're moving from is a kind of a fuzzy match where if the provider fired in the number, as long as it matched whether it had the extension or not, it would find that user, to an explicit match scenario where the provider will have to send the number in ext equals format or it won't ring that phone. And Microsoft have sent this notification out to everybody they think has a tenant configured like that. But the problem is most direct routing providers wouldn't send the number in that format, and they're not responsible for the customer's tenant. So this switch is going to happen unless they've been super proactive about commsing to their end users, and it's not really their configuration, it kind of falls between the gaps. Then some people might lose the ability to route. So if you're Teams admin, check the blog and make sure you understand how your numbers are set up. If they are set up with ext equals, make sure either your session border controllers or your operator is configured correctly to route to those users.
Great, and we'll put a link in the description to that one, just in case you missed it. Anyway, last one on today's news list is something that I didn't think I'd be talking about a lot of nowadays, especially now it's 2023, but Skype for Business Server.
Last but not least, or maybe least, but Skype for Business Server team have opened up a customer tap. So not much detail on what they'll be testing, but they would only do a tap if something new is coming. Microsoft has said previously that for the customers that need it, they'll continue to support Skype for Business Server in some shape or form. I wouldn't be getting overexcited that there's going to be some team server or some magic new features. This will mainly be maintenance and continuing it for it to work. But if you are in the Skype world and staying there for some length of time and you want to get the early access to the code, there's a link again in the comments to try and get on that tap and see what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff. Well, let's move on to events. It was extremely busy in January with events, and it's even busier across the rest of the month and into March. So first up, we've got Microsoft UC User Group in London. Tom, will you be there?
Yeah, I'll be there. That's our regular quarterly group, and I'm excited for that one because we're at BT in their fancy new office, which is really nice if you haven't been there. We'll be doing a bit of a Teams update, and then a friend from BT Wholesale is doing a session on the analog and PSTN switch off and how that is happening from a technical point of view, because it's quite interesting, but also the implications for you as an organization with things like if you've got fax lines or alarms or any analog connectivity, there are some changes there. So yeah, that'll be a fun one. 21st of February, which someone pointed out is Pancake Day, so I don't know if we have to ship some pancakes in or something, but that should be fun.
I'm certainly taking lemon juice with you. Next up, Teams Fireside Chat. So that's coming up in February too.
Yeah, this is our online group. So once a month we get together, and we've got Adam Ball, who runs a specialist Microsoft partner in the US, and he's a long-term MVP. So he's going to kind of dive into what they're doing from a project's point of view, from a customer point of view. And we're just getting really great conversation. We're regularly getting over 100 people into that. Next month we've got Nikki Chappelle, who's well-known in the MVP space for compliance. And then April we've got Ilya coming on as well to get into kind of everything Microsoft Teams rooms. So really enjoying that. And if you're anyway in this space and you want to kind of have the inside conversation, that's an hour well spent, I think.
Great stuff. And last on the list, Teams Insider Podcast with Graham Walsh and co.
Yeah, I just wanted to plug this. This is a new podcast I'm doing. I'm trying to get a show out every week now. I've had so many good conversations, and we're building up Empowering.Cloud. It's been super busy, and I sort of realised I'm having all these good conversations and not getting time to blog them. So I was like, well, why don't we just do a podcast where we talk to people in the industry and in customers and record them? So doing a pod every week. Yeah, Graham's been on. Aaron Steele, who's a Microsoft PM for the NDI stuff, which is really interesting. And I had a a really good one that's just been posted from Cho Young, who's the product owner at Parexel, about their very fast migration, 20,000 users, 50 countries, under 4 weeks, and their journey to Teams Phone as well. So what I'm trying to do, and if anybody's listening and they want to get involved, more stories from kind of enterprise, more real world stuff. So low on marketing, high on real world content.
Great stuff, and we'll drop some links in the description to those as well. Okay, it's time for open Q&A with our Microsoft Teams experts on the line today. Tom, first of all, not so great news recently, big layoffs in the tech world. Microsoft equally announced a whole bunch of layoffs as well, but more specifically, they've made layoffs in the HoloLens team. And so I was kind of wondering whether is immersive collaboration, that appetite for that kind of technology, moving kind of the 2D meeting experience on a step, is that appetite maybe wailing a little bit? Why do you think that might have happened?
It does feel like it. So Microsoft has shut down AltSpace VR, which was a property they bought, which was a virtual reality space. We actually did some events in. It was quite interesting. But also, I think in general, because the economy's tightening a little bit, the idea of everybody having headsets and investing is a little bit down unless there's a specific use case. And obviously Meta has been, like confidence has been tanking over there in terms of the strategy. So I think Microsoft were excited because everybody else was excited, and now everybody's less excited. I still think there's a use case there, and Microsoft had a change of leadership in the whole HoloLens division. It's going more focused on like specific industrial use cases. So I think it will still be there, but I don't think we're all meeting in VR next month, as some of the pundits were saying last year. But I'm interested to see what others on the call think about that.
I think that use case in the workplace for standard meetings, I just couldn't see it. You all walk in a room, put a headset on. Why would you want to do that? You want to see each other in the meeting space. So I think it was really specific use cases. When they demoed it at Ignite and Inspire, looking at car engines and things like that. There were some certain use cases. I think Google Glass was another example where there are really specific applications, and obviously COVID hit and we all work remotely, and I think it probably could have had an impact on it. I think why it hasn't taken off as well. I just could never get used to that sort of thing, I don't think.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. The car design one is a perfect case where it legitimately adds value. Like the extra fuss is worth some upside, isn't it? But yeah, just meeting, like, what does it add beyond video for the fuss is a valid question, I think.
I was going to say, I think there's a challenge as well, isn't there, around like the pricing for these devices, because it's hard enough, like we're all in this space, it's hard enough to get people to have proper headsets, proper cameras, just getting the right kit out to the desktops. And then we're suddenly thinking about the HoloLens. I mean, I remember seeing it at Future Decoded, we had it there. It's an amazing piece of kit, but exactly as Graham said, it's very specific use cases. Like you see them pulling apart a jet engine. You're like, whoa, that's amazing. Or remote field support, like talking someone through, like fixing an elevator, I think was the example that they had. It's amazing for that kind of thing. But I just think this idea of like general day-to-day communications, and if you've used any of like the PSVR or the Oculus, it can be quite tiring to be inside those headsets for any long period of time. And I think that whole thing's a real challenge.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We've seen, we also report on the XR space, the extended reality space, and we see a lot of appetite for this kind of technology in vertical, solutions or vertical environments, very specific use cases. But is the world ready to switch out the webcam, switch out Zoom on Teams or whatever to a fully immersive solution? We'll see, but maybe not.
It was never gonna fly in the enterprise, for reasons everyone said. High bar entry. It's not just the peripheral; it's the PC that runs it. It's not one-click join, and I think it was a technology searching for a purpose in the normal admin back office enterprise. Certainly, frontline, like you mentioned, XR is the way to go. Where it's merging real life with augmented reality and what have you.
Yeah.
But going into a virtual world and pretending to be the same person but with a different avatar with no legs for what business purpose. I can't imagine business transactions happening in that space. That is just crazy. So I'm not surprised really, but hey, ChatGPT is the new mesh, I think, from a Microsoft perspective. That has far more business relevant use cases than sticking on a HoloLens or Oculus or what have you. So that's probably where the focus is going now. So actually we could finally monetize AI to a certain degree to help actual productivity, help business decisions, streamline process, all that type of stuff. So it's not surprising that mesh and what have you is taking a bit of a hit on this.
It's interesting. I think, this certainly continues to be a space where a lot more is said than done, particularly, plenty of hardware. It's interesting that Apple seems to be doubling down this year around a hardware device. They're putting all of their focus. But I think many of us expect that type of thing to have a big impact in the enterprise anytime soon.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, there are lots of interesting technologies out there at the moment, and as you mentioned, AI. We're going to come on to ChatGPT as well. But I did do a poll on LinkedIn just last week, and we got almost 500 votes. But when I asked the audience what they felt were the biggest Microsoft Teams opportunities in 2023, ChatGPT was top with almost 48% of the votes. Second in line was contact center. Third in line was hybrid room kits and accessories. And fourth in line was Operator Connect. So there was some good comments on the thread as well, potentially looking at things like Teams Mobile. But I know we did our big predictions series in January, and you all shared your ideas. But any movement on those predictions? What do you think?
Teams Phone Mobile is interesting. That's really hot at the moment. I just finished recording a podcast with Vandana Thomas, who owns that product in Microsoft, and it's only in 5 operators so far, but it's already doing decent numbers, and I think that might be potentially a bigger impact than we think. But it's hard to argue with ChatGPT. Like, it's so easy to see the potential of that technology. Never having to take notes in another meeting, proactively pulling out actions, like answering instant messages so you don't have to do it. Like there's just endless productivity benefits that could be there.
If they can get it so that you can convert it into video, so that it can pretend to be you in a meeting, so you can just go hello and thank you for joining. Yeah. That's 90% of meetings done, right?
Your AI meets up my AI, and they just tell us what we're supposed to do.
No, I guess this is, I think, interesting because we have a mainstream, even kind of consumer audience that can now, that's played with this technology and can appreciate it. And so I think the idea, specifically around a meeting recap, I think all of that prior to ChatGPT kind of being touched by kind of even a consumer lay crowd, they may have struggled with the idea of how compelling or how well this could be done. But I think they all have a different perspective at this stage. So I think if I had to redo my predictions, I would reprioritize with ChatGPT high up. Teamspace, I guess, it still doesn't, I guess there's still plenty of, I think, useful discussion around pricing and the extent to which, with kind of a challenging economy and some headwinds, organizations in a big way are going to be able to embrace premium. But I think there's certainly a new awareness around capability around this technology and confidence in it, with the tailwind from ChatGPT.
So do we think premium? This is really going to pave the way for premium upgrades, or it's certainly going to take time to get some of these features and applications baked into the Teams experience from Microsoft. What do you think?
I was going to say, one issue that's come up in, let's say, the public or consumer space with ChatGPT is resources. They're out of resources. So the question is Microsoft going to be able to fund this successfully? With the $10 license, subsidizing this, and that's going to be a concern. How is it going to be real time available all the time, or is it okay? Graham can have it on Mondays and Tom has it on Tuesdays. I think there's going to be a lot of compute there, or is that what Microsoft have invested in to help optimize it and make it much more streamlined on Azure?
Yeah, I think I heard that the majority of the investment is actually Azure resources rather than cash. So this 10 billion investment is more around resources. But I think it's really interesting, right? I think this $10 premium, and I didn't catch last week's show, but I've kind of struggled with what's the real value on a broad perspective for Teams Premium, the features are good. There's some nice customization, there's lobbies and all that kind of stuff. Yes, there's advanced security, but we do a lot of work outside of Teams to make sure that tenants are secure. But, I think this has the potential for real broad appeal. Everyone can kind of see this easy access of, meeting summaries and action summaries. And I was literally just watching a YouTube video last week where someone was saying, hey, here's how to get all your meeting actions out of Teams and into ChatGPT and get it all summarized. And they're copying the transcript out. And, well, actually, no, now it just does it by itself, or will do, is the promise of Premium. So, I'm really excited for Teams Premium. I think this could be the killer feature that will help it, get more mainstream genuinely, because I don't think there was enough in the rest of the stack. And also, looking at what's happened with Teams over the last few years now, it's been a phenomenal product, but it's baked into the 365 license cost, right? For the most part. And so for them to have a separate revenue stream that's directly attached to Teams and Teams development, I think, as Graham points out, might be a great way to get more investment in this space.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'd like to go over to Randy on this one. Randy, what's your perspective on ChatGPT? I know you can be a little bit skeptical about these things. What's your perspective?
Well, I'm definitely not skeptical about the use case. I do hope it's not Skynet, of course. And that we're not going to be all, sort of in a jelly-filled coffin in a big field of things powering the machines in a few years. But yeah, I think it does have a lot of potential. Again, like I said in our little side chat that we've got here, that 6 weeks ago, literally nobody had heard of ChatGPT. Hence, there were no predictions by the learned crowd on this very podcast about it. So yeah, I think the potential is massive. And Microsoft obviously have been investing for a long time without really anybody knowing. And then suddenly they give, I've heard numbers anywhere from $1 billion to $10 billion, as someone said, to keep feeding the server farm and stuff. Baking into Teams, I mean, Microsoft have been talking about the AI bits in Teams and all these prediction things and taking meeting actions and stuff for a while. But we never really understood or knew how they were going to do it. And I guess we know now. And, those things would be great. If they cost something in a premium license, I think, that'll be a really good use case, a very compelling thing for premium versus, marketing stuff and whatever else. But it has to have a lot of value. It has to be beyond, my example would be Adam Sandler in the movie Click, where he just kept clicking his little remote to skip through things he didn't like in his life. If that's what we're going to do with ChatGPT, I don't want to skip some things, but there are some things certainly I would love to skip.
Tom, let's talk about ISE for a moment. We've already gone through some of the headlines, but it'd be great to hear from the wider audience, exactly what they found was most interesting at ISE this year. I know it was a huge event. So, Graham, you was at ISE. What was it like for you?
A long week, that's for sure. The 4 days it was on, I'm not sure they've released the official numbers yet, but it was certainly well attended. I think, post-COVID, it's, everyone's coming back together, being in person, which is great to see all these events happening again. And from the show floor, again, when I was speaking to, actually I bumped into Ilya at the airport, he was on the same flight as me on the way home. He said, the amount of devices that he saw and, the talk about Teams at so many vendors' booths. It's a very diverse show, should we say, between hardware OEMs for the meeting spaces, but also everything else that goes around that meeting room. So, you got all the audio, or Pro AV, as you call it. So all of those people doing things for Microsoft Teams, but also, people who are doing interactive boards, etc. So everything is, Teams enabled, should we say. So there's a big element on there. And there is really two platforms people are talking about, Teams and Zoom. So all the OEMs are sort of focusing on those two major ones. In terms of product announcements, Tom reeled off a few there. I think also Cisco showing off there. Microsoft Teams Rooms on Android offering.
Yes, it's
that was
super busy showing the MTR stuff. I went over and I think they were a little bit bored of demoing just the MTR stuff. The WebEx people were like, look at our stuff too.
Did they do any WebEx demos?
Well, they
That's the
definitely
question.
wanted to. But everyone was excited for their coming to MTR. So I think they were hopeful to show off more. But certainly when I went over, all the buzz was around their units with MTR.
And also the Yealink was showing off their center of room camera. So there's this new concept of center camera technology now that's coming out from vendors. So Yealink was showing theirs off. I think Randy, over to you. I think you were showing yours off too, weren't you?
Yeah, we had a massive amount of interest on the Logi stand. It was like a nightclub pretty much all week except for Friday, which was the quiet day. But everybody was queued up to see what the site looked like on the stand. We actually had 7 of them there. And in fact, I've got one in my bag, a preview unit that doesn't work, but I can still take it to shows. Yeah, huge amount of buzz around center of room, and everybody's kind of doing it a little bit differently. I did actually get a chance to go and see the Yealink one as well. Much bigger in person than you'd expect, but nevertheless, it's something that Microsoft are going to big up. And then just the other stuff, everybody has something new. Neat with a management platform, which is something that's been missing for a long time. So well done there. Looking forward to seeing that. Just new devices. I didn't expect AudioCodes to come out with as many devices as they did, given that they, only kind of were showcasing the devices that they'd bought in from Dolby, the PanaCast Android bar. I kind of saw that coming. Really, it's why wouldn't you do that on the back of the massive success and all the marketing Microsoft has been doing for it? So, lots and lots of new stuff, and more and more stuff in the very crowded space. The list is now 12 vendors with an MTR of their own, so which is huge.
Yeah, lots of choice, lots of competition. Tom, what's your take on the choice situation? Have we got too much choice in this catalog now, or do you think there's space for more?
Yeah, I think it's tough for customers. Like Microsoft are trying to bring in different vendors with different uniques, and I think a lot of the conversation now, obviously there are differences in the kit, technical differences, chipset differences, but some of it is about support, availability, portfolio, vendor relationships. I think it's interesting. I mainly work with enterprise customers, and there's a lot of work for them to do now to work out which vendor they go with. And the reality is, some of the bigger vendors have a wider portfolio. So in theory, you could have one of everything from, say, a Logi or a Poly maybe. But what I'm seeing is people mix and match as well, because they like this device from this vendor, that device from that vendor. So then you have the interesting operational overhead of different tooling. So lots of great for customers in the sense of innovation and choice and price competition, but it does add some complexity in how you choose your ecosystem partners.
Indeed. Well, lots of news this month, lots of hot topics to riff on. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. I think that's about it from us. And for anyone out there, if you've enjoyed today's session, please subscribe to UC Today News and give us a quick share on social, and it's always appreciated. And if you're a fan of Microsoft Teams and you want to be part of the conversation, you can connect with Tom, myself, and our guest speakers on LinkedIn, and some of us are even on Twitter, and our social links are in the description. So thanks again to everyone for joining in. We'll be back next month. I'm Rob Scott from UC Today, and thanks for watching.